Now, don't be afraid. I know everything looks kind of scary and academic, but I swear to you it's not. I avoided using jargon, and there's a lot of diagrams and charts. So the objective of this is to make the research available to a wide audience and not just to like academic specialists. If there's something you don't understand, if there's something you don't know, if there's something you want to ask, by all means just raise your hand, or you want to make a comment, and we can do that, okay? So this is the presentation I used for the actual defense. I tried to edit it, but the file was too big, so my computer crashed many times. But anyway, let's get started. So in academic presentations, you have to show this. Obviously, the work has to follow the logic of having a hypothesis that you verify, etc. But I won't bore you with this, and we'll move straight to the point. So why was I interested in the topic of design and entrepreneurship? Obviously, you have to justify the relevance. Well, for starters, new companies are the ones creating more jobs, whereas old companies destroy jobs. Now, this is a fact, at least for the United States. So it's a priority to make entrepreneurship, also public policy, so people create their own companies and create jobs. Obviously, this is relevant, and I am aware many of you painfully know this reality. Also in Italy, the country where I carried this research, where I lived for 10 years, it was very similar to the Spanish crisis. So as you can see, there's a lot of youth unemployment, and there's a lot of interest in pushing people to become entrepreneurs instead of having this mentality of, I will be hired by someone when I graduate, okay? And obviously, I'm a designer, so I also like a lot design, mixing it with business and with strategy. And this quote really encompasses very well what I wanted to achieve with this research. So what we're doing as designers, whether you like it or not, inevitably, is designing the business of the company that you're working for. So I don't want to be a vinegar, but I will post everything on SlideShare. So don't distract yourself taking pictures, because everything is online. Okay? It's like when you go to a concert and you're like, no, enjoy the moment, okay? So this is, I think, a very famous example of a design entrepreneur. So I guess many of you know Dyson, the vacuum cleaners. Some of you may even own one. I do. They're terrific. But what is very particular is that if you know the story, like Dyson really created a new market or a new segment, like the vacuum cleaners with no bags, and specialty vacuum cleaners for people with allergy. And he did this by redesigning the mechanisms of the vacuum cleaner. So this is one of the examples that inspired me to say, okay, a designer can become an entrepreneur. I think there's something going on here. Let's go deeper. Then there's obviously, on the digital side, cases we all know. Airbnb is one example. It was founded by 2 designers. So I think this is a phenomenon worth investigating. So I told you it was going to be visually appealing. In the synthesis, I wanted to understand the role of design in creating new firms. Okay, if there's it. And these were the subtopics of my research, but I will spare you a lot of confusion, and I'm going to highlight you. There was a laser beam somewhere. Okay.
You have to press the center.
The center. Okay, great. So basically, design can have 3 roles within entrepreneurship. So it can be the content. So we can sell design as professional design services, and it's the content of your business activity. It's what you sell. Then you can have design as a medium. So you can also shape someone else's business offering. If you have a client and he asks you to redesign something, then you're using design as a medium. I was more interested in this side of the equation. So how can design give shape to the business idea? I know it's happening because there's a lot of things going on around here. business model design. So these were some topics I explored in my research. So as I mentioned, traditionally, design entrepreneurship is here. So let's encourage designers to become entrepreneurs. So maybe if you have your own clothing line or your own furniture line, well then you are in this space. Recently, design has moved here. So now we know, I think it's a given, we all do this in our everyday jobs, design can shape the business strategy. But I wanted to explore more riskier areas. So what if design could be used to shape the business idea? So earlier on in the entrepreneurial process. So design can be an instrument to frame, generate, shape, develop, prototype, and assess business ideas. Okay? So in this diagram you can see clearly you have the design process and you have the entrepreneurial process. And they have two things in common, and basically they both have a front end. So an early phase that is fuzzy, full of uncertainty, full of risks. You don't know exactly where you're going, you don't know exactly what you want to achieve. So I wanted to see if maybe these two processes could feed each other. Okay? So what is the front end of innovation? So before the design product release starts, you have this fuzzy phase. It's not linear. Maybe you have an idea, you test it, but maybe you don't like it, so you go back, or you follow up, and then you have another idea that enriches the one you have. So it's really not linear, and it's chaotic and uncertain. Okay? However, the design discipline, we as designers, have instruments that help us deal with this uncertainty and with this complexity. So, well, this is a academic jargon that I have to put in, but basically this is what I did. It's more visually appealing, this way. So understanding what is exactly, when I say business idea, what do I mean by that? I'm going to explain that in a minute. So then case studies of companies and designers that have become entrepreneurs. Okay. Also, all the organizations that support startups, like incubators, accelerators, I wanted to understand how they work. And then there's an experiment that I'm going to explain in a bit. So when we mean an entrepreneurial opportunity, what do we mean? So in entrepreneurship, you distinguish two things. So you can be an opportunity-driven entrepreneur, which is what we know commonly in the Western world do. So you identify or create an opportunity, there's an opportunity and you pursue it. So you want to make a profit. But then there's also necessity-based. So if you're in an undeveloped country and you need an income and you don't have a job, you sell whatever you have, that's necessity-based. And that's outside of the scope of the work. So we want to study entrepreneurial opportunity. So what is it? I was interested in this. So opportunity is a creative product in entrepreneurship. And it's a progress, so it's idea and action. So you can have a lot of great ideas, but if you don't act on them, they're worthless. Or if they're not feasible, they're worthless, okay? So it goes from having an initial insight to a fully shaped idea about how you start and how you operate a business. And this is more or less the entrepreneurial process. It's simplified, obviously it's not that linear. And I was interested in this. So very early stage when you really want to identify the opportunity, okay? And there's two sides of this story. Some people say, you know, opportunities exist, they're out there. You just have to discover them. So you need to be alert, you need to connect the dots. You really are just rearranging existing resources, you're not making up anything new. So let's try to focus on what you can do to be more alert, what you can do to discover more things. But then there's the other side of the equation, other researchers, other people that say, well, no, they're created, because you're doing new things, you are creating. And it's not perfect, you act, and you test, you iterate, you receive feedback, And it's social, so you don't do it in isolation. You have a network of people that support you, that mentor you, that tutor you, and you're generating new knowledge. Okay, so these two perspectives of research. Now agreed, you rarely find these things pure. So there will be a mix of the two things. Sometimes you discover something, but to exploit the opportunity, you need to create something, and vice versa. Okay, so I have to explain a few things here. So overall, this process is casual and it's sloppy. You do it, you make mistakes, you may lose money, you may lose time, so it's not really organized. Everyone does it how they can, without any training, without any organization. You may waste time, money, energy, you pursue ideas that are not sound. And there has to be some creativity. Some people have said, you need to be creative to do this. But we know that designers are creative too. They need to be creative. So can design contribute? So as I said before, designers, we're formally trained in some of the skills. So we deal with undefined problems, we use heuristics, we focus on creating a solution, and so on. And before I show this, I want to show you this. Who knows this? I bet a lot of you do. Okay, and why is it useful for us in this aspect? Because the business model will help us define the opportunity. So once you have this fuzzy, very undefined, but when you start putting it down on paper, you start realizing, oh, so I can use these resources. I have access to these people. I am observing these needs. So then the opportunity starts being concrete. Okay? And why are they useful, these visual instruments, to design business models? So they help us overcome two challenges. They are cognitive, okay, and organizational. So basically, they help you absorb complexity. They challenge your mind, your established culture, okay? And they stimulate sharing knowledge, sharing information. And in the organization too. So you can use them to build consensus, to build teamwork, and share the knowledge and enhance the cooperation between people in our organization. Now, who knows this? Can anyone tell me what products are in this picture? And why did I put them here? They're not the kind of things you think of when you think of entrepreneurship, right? Well, actually, in Italy, they are considered, and I'm going to tell you why. Well, for instance, here, obviously, design is in the content. So you are selling products that are highly aesthetic, highly symbolic, and there's a big component of novelty, okay? But then, these opportunities were created. When you study the stories of these entrepreneurs, mostly Italian entrepreneurs, and when they created these companies, they didn't do any market research. They didn't ask people, do you want a Pinocchio-shaped comb? No, they didn't. Would you like a plan-shaped brush to wash your bathroom? No, they didn't. What they did, they acted, okay? They acted and then they wait for the market feedback and then they refine. And many of these companies work in clusters. So this is socially constructed. They work as a network. It's what they call industrial districts in Italy. So it's a sort of networked entrepreneurship, okay? They all work together. But these opportunities could be say, okay, they created them. Yeah?
What kind of services do they help? What kind of exchange do they have among each other?
Well, normally these people are clustered. For example, there's districts where you know some people will specialize in working this material. So you outsource that to them. You know that someone else is very expert in polishing the pieces in a certain way. So you outsource that product to them. So there's many companies that work closely together in a closed-knit space, but everyone does, like they specialize in a tiny part of the value chain, and they work together and they create districts. Some specialize in plastic, some specialize in metal, some in woodworking, some in textile, in fashion. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So moving on. And then I also studied these ones. So I guess these ones, you all know them, right? So why are they here? In this one, design moved a little bit back. So design shaped the business concept. They really don't sell design, but these companies were founded by designers. So in a way, they were shaped by design. And here, the entrepreneurial opportunity was discovered. So when I went to study these case studies, a lot of these companies, when they were founding, they did user testing. And it was also quite problematic. So I really want to share videos online, but I can't find a way to do it effectively. So they did it. Something they wanted to do themselves. Or, oh, I wish I really could share presentations online. I'm going to find a way to do it. Okay? So in this way, these problems were already there. It was quite a matter of time before somebody else did it. With all the technology advancing, if the woman who invented SlideShare didn't do it, someone else would have done it, because, I mean, it's brilliant. We all need to share presentations online. And then, when we study all these support systems for startups, many of them are catered especially for designers. And these are some of the most famous. And some come from design schools. Design schools that want to push people to become entrepreneurs. But what is the problem with this? Well, they come in late in the entrepreneurial process. So you join them when you already have like a business concept. You already have maybe something tested. You want to start producing, or you want to start setting up the company. But they really don't assist you in helping you find a business idea. And it's a traditional type of entrepreneurship. So I tell a designer, oh, why don't you create your own furniture line and sell it? Oh, okay. But then again, we see design at the end. So design as the business offering. So, and this is when service design came into the picture, because the creation of a new venture is a wicked problem. So, it's fuzzy, it's uncertain, it's risky. And you have a lot of problems that you also have in service design problems. You have high levels of uncertainty, risk, systemic problems. You need to build new networks, you need to gain consensus, you need to involve stakeholders. And then there's a difficulty to prove that your idea will be successful before you do it. Okay? And as I was saying, service design tools help you with all of this. They help you deal with fuzzy problems. They help you create a network of actors, stakeholders. You can frame and generate the ideas. You can prototype intangible concepts, and you can assess together their feasibility. And this is where I did a small experiment. So I developed a set of service design instruments, and I tested them in a workshop that took place in Beijing, China. And it was in this project called the Dreaming. Does anyone know the project? So it's a social innovation project. So it's based in India, China, and Brazil. And they aim at enabling people to become entrepreneurs. And they develop these events called this series of workshops, where they try to find and prototype business ideas really fast, like in 2 days. They enter with nothing. They have to live with a business idea almost ready for pitching. Sort of like a hackathon, but for entrepreneurs. And in this phase, they also designed the format like this. So you have different profiles sitting at the same table, and everyone has a different role. Okay? So what I did, well, I selected the tools, and I designed simplified versions of the tools that I'm going to show you. So obviously the people that will be in the workshop, they're not designers. They don't know what service design is, they haven't seen it in their lives, and it's not their job to be a designer, they want to be entrepreneurs. So you should enable them. Okay? And we were working here. So this is the space that I'm working in. So identify the opportunity. and perhaps starting defining, the product and the service. And these were some of the tools that I selected according to the workshop goals. So you have ones that enable divergent thinking, others enable convergent thinking. And these are some examples. So as you can see, it's very basic. So you just want them to see it, and it needs to be very clear what they need to do. So this is sort of like mind mapping, simplified, as type of personas, very simplified. These people don't speak English. So they need to see it, and they need to understand, okay? And this is a picture from the workshop, and it took place in Tsinghua University. So they were mostly students, bachelor students. Of course, there were language difficulties because I don't speak Chinese. They don't speak a lot of English. But when the workshop is designed like this, you really don't need to focus on the content because you are designing all the interactions, okay? Well, they worked very well. They really did connect the dots. They found issues that were contradicting, like my persona doesn't match my business model. And then they realized, okay, we need to fix that. And they realized that right away. And they really did, explore more the problems before moving to a solution. This is some of the outcome of the workshop. It's all in Chinese. If you want to download everything from my website, it's translated. So there was also a control group, meaning not everyone in the workshop was using my tools. Some people were, some others weren't, and then you can compare, no? So those who worked with my tools and those who didn't, we'll attribute the difference to the tools. And these are some examples of concepts, business concepts. And for instance, this is the same team, and the first day they worked without the tools. And this is the same team the second day with the tools. So you can see an increase in the depth, the complexity, the level of ideas. Their product had more feature, they added order, they added structure. They added different levels of assessment. So overall, I think the outcome was positive. And these are some ideas by the people that did not use the tools. So I think they're more early stage, they're less developed, they're less detailed. Okay, so as I mentioned, the participants worked very efficiently. They focused on the content of the ideas. They prototyped, they assessed collaboratively, and the tools gave them like a checklist. So before you move to the solution, don't forget to think about the business model, because I was giving them the tools. So then they know, okay, we shouldn't forget that. So the tools provided a structure to the fuzzy front-end activities. Because this was a PhD defense, I had to include this slide. So be patient. So these are the original contributions of the work. If you're interested, we can discuss them later. Because there's obviously theoretical and practical, but moving on. So obviously there's limitations. I'm not saying this is a magic wand solution. So, well, the sample was very small, okay? It's a unique cultural context, and my participants were all Chinese. So maybe if I do it here in Spain, or if I do it in a different type of culture, I don't know, if I do it in Israel, but they're very anti-tell me what to do, it might not work, they may not like it. And there were not many opportunities to replicate the experiment. I really did try to do it in another country. Because of lack of time and funds, that was not possible. And well, this research is obviously a work in progress. And it doesn't give definitive answers, maybe it just gives more questions. And this is it. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer. Questions?
How did you assess the depth or the quality or the improvements of that particular condition?
Yeah, that was tricky. What we did was assessing the number of features for many of them design products or services. And many were very high level. Those that did not work with me, for example, they were like, oh, let's do a service like, I don't know, a lamp that filters air. But that doesn't tell me anything. Whereas we assess by the number of details or features they included. Like, for example, the example I showed, oh, they designed a service and they prototyped a small app. They developed a bracelet, like a wearable that you can wear. They thought of a business model with different levels of experience. So you could really see way more detail in the people that were using the tools than in people that did not use them. So they stayed more at the generic level. They didn't go to the detail.
And was it asked in any of the instruments to go into more detail? It's
No,
just a result?
no, but I designed the workshop that way. So the instruments were going to take you without you almost even noticing, because I was asking you to do more things. So think about the user, think about the business model. So now let's imagine who is going to buy this, where. So how are you going to sell it? How are you going to distribute it? Whereas the others were a little bit left on their own. So they had to manage also their own workflow. They had to organize their own workflow. They did not agree. Let's do this first. No, let's do this. Whereas here the process was designed. No? So they really didn't have to worry. They just worked on the content of the idea.
What were the instructions or the instruments for the control group?
They were just given one format, and they were told, okay, let's think of a business idea. Those were the instructions for the control group. So, but I mean, I guess this happens often in this type of workshops, maybe in settings where design is not very advanced. They just assume that you get people together and by magic they will produce things. And it's not like that. Like, you have to design the workshop as well.
What do you think? That there is not proper framework to produce ideas in the beginning? Because basically what you're saying is your conclusion is not only that design can help, but anything maybe can help, because there's nothing there. So we're entering in an empty space where actually all the business ideas, when they get a little mature, then someone gets to use here's an Excel file, then you can do a business case, you can do this and that. And when it starts to be thought as a business, then you have some tools. But when it's still dealing with creativity, there's no tools.
Yes.
And my experience is that many people are reluctant to do these things because they fear that structure in creativity actually kills the spontaneous, whatever. So people, I mean, there might be a reason why for 40, 50, 60 years nobody has been able or willing to actually introduce a structure in that part of the process. Just sharing with you.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I agree in some way. I agree in the part that you say design is not the only discipline that can give something. Definitely. There are other things you can put in that space. And as you said, it's an empty space. So maybe anything would work. But I think that at least what I saw was that the structure did really help them. Because you're not being too narrow, like telling them, do this. So there's a kind of delicate equilibrium between providing a framework and telling them what to do. So there's some uncertainty there. So you have to build a space where people can be creative, but not let them be too loose, because there's in Italian or Latin actually, there's an expression called horror vacui, the fear of the emptiness. No, you have no boundaries, so you don't know where to start. You can do everything, so you do nothing.
I tend to agree with you, because I teach also these things, but what you will encounter over and over with entrepreneurs is those things that you're showing us there, those are they're toys, they're games for kids.
Yeah.
A true entrepreneur doesn't give a shit about those people. They have vision, they want to do something, they push themselves, they find the means, they find the resources, and then they succeed. Most of the people who get engaged in these adventures, they end up failing, or actually they don't produce anything powerful or meaningful.
Yeah.
And some people will tell you, yeah, that's because they don't feel the passion. They're just playing with these things. They're playing to become entrepreneurs, but they don't actually feel it inside. And it's a difficult argument to actually fight, because
I think
that's a true thing.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the question of whether entrepreneurship can be taught. Mm-hmm. That is a big question mark. There's a huge debate. So can you really teach someone to be an entrepreneur? Or are you born being an entrepreneur? You just have this type of personality where, as you mentioned, you're very passionate, you're very determined, you're very driven, and it doesn't matter what I give you or I give you not. You're going to do it. But I think that was a little bit outside of the scope of the research, but I am aware. A lot of people are very reluctant to, also they oppose entrepreneurship education. They say we don't need to teach these people because they know what they want, they know what to do. But if you help them or if you provide them with a little bit more structure, could they be faster? Could they be more effective? Could they avoid making mistakes? That was the issue here rather than whether you're born an entrepreneur or not.
And I think the bigger question is, can you give more access to other people? So can these tools open the doors to people who might never overcome these problems by themselves to actually help them in a step-by-step process?
Yeah. Any other question?
Could you go back to the third slide?
Sure. This one?
The next one?
Yeah.
Next, okay. With the different circles of literature, do you see what I mean?
This one.
This one. Okay, so because you're talking about, for example, about these big issues of unemployment or generation of wealth. Did you tackle that at all in your articles or in your thesis? I mean, because I'm quite interested in these bigger topics.
The thing is, when you do a PhD, if you ever do it, these issues are so big. And I mean, they're gigantic. Like there's armies of people, politicians, organizations working here. So you have to be very humble and define your problem very well and really go in depth into giving an original contribution in here. Otherwise, you just risk being lost.
Because you've been carrying out this research with these bigger issues in mind as well, or was it?
Yeah, they are, but they're more like the justification of why I think it's important. Like, why should people care?
Relevance.
Yeah, it's more like relevant. Why should people care about this research?
Right.
It's basically the questions that I'm trying to answer here. So, any other questions?
How long did you spend in your research?
3.5 years, full time.
You did only one workshop with the participants?
There were 3 workshops, but when you're doing field research, especially in academic settings where you can't really pay participants and give incentives and do proper recruitment, then things can go wrong. And obviously, in my case, they did. Out of the 3 workshops that I had scheduled, only 1 worked out as I expected. The other 2 didn't work.
What does it mean that they didn't work?
Well, I had 3 cities. I did the workshop in 3 cities, okay? In Hong Kong, in Shanghai, and in Beijing. And I was expecting Beijing to be the most difficult because they don't speak almost any English. Whereas I was told Shanghai will be okay, it's international, they will speak English. Also Hong Kong, like they're bilingual, so no problem. When we arrived to China, I discovered that the people in Hong Kong were charging people to attend. And my co-supervisor, who was the one that organized all this dreaming project, he felt very embarrassed, and he said, we can't put people like in a test if they're paying to attend, because they sold it like a training, and it was just not appropriate. Like, these people are paying money to come. We can't use them as guinea pigs. So we had to cancel the experiment in that one. Like, we just had the normal workshop without any tools. And in Shanghai happened a little bit of what Humberto said. So the people that came were extremely opinionated and refused to work with the instruments because, as he rightly said, they're gimmicks. This is not real. I do things. And also they sold it like a type of networking event, so a lot of really high-profile people came. And if you're an experienced entrepreneur, if you're a serial entrepreneur, you don't want to do this, no? Whereas in Beijing, the people that came were really young, they were students, they were more eager to participate, and despite the language barrier, it went well.
I think that might be the main result of the research, that the entrepreneurship minded didn't need that. That's relevant, and that's really important.
But I don't think it's not that they don't need, because this is also a matter of trends and fashion. They rejected because it was coming from her.
Yeah.
Because the business model canvas that she showed to us is done by a designer.
Yeah.
And when this guy got all the attention from the media and whatever, then you won't go to you can go to anywhere in the world and tell them to fill a canvas, and they will do it religiously. Like, yes, this is now, and it's a tool design. It's the same thing. It's just a small poster with some lines.
Yeah, it's a framework.
And all of a sudden, it looks like it's gonna help you, like find whatever. But because it's Alex Osterwalder and it's
yeah, I'm not Alexander Osterwalder, so they kind of didn't like to fill my tools.
If I understood correctly, you focus on the opportunity-driven entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Do you think this framework could work in a context of necessity-driven entrepreneurship? Just the question.
I don't know. I don't think so, because necessity-driven entrepreneurship is, it's like, okay, I'm unemployed, I don't have money, I don't have contacts, I am going to sell like paper tissues on the subway. So there really isn't a lot of things you can do. I mean, these people are in real dire trouble. They do this because they need to feed their families. They have no other source of income. So I think it would be difficult. I don't think I can go to them and say, hey, let's do a workshop. I will give you some tools. And I don't know. I don't think it would be also humanly appropriate. Thank you.
Not as a research, but if you're able to establish mechanisms inside the government that helps people improve, so maybe instead of, I mean, all the governments have mechanisms to talk to the people who want to start something, and they tell them the same thing. Now, here's the business plan. You fill this exercise. If you can have some public workers who knows basic tools and they can help the guy who sells tissues. Okay, think about this, think about that. Maybe you do this way. You add something on top of the tissue. Maybe the guy, or you clean your hands. Maybe the guy will get more tissue from you.
I think it could be an interesting next step of the research, trying to see if it also applies in that area. I really don't know the answer to that question right now.
No, just raise it like an open.
You can tell Ione to bring it to Australia with her and see.
Do you have some conclusion related with what happens with designers after designing the idea? Because designers have the skills to create. A design entrepreneur is not only creating a business,
definitely,
he also needs to follow the business and manage the business. Have designers the skills to manage?
I think that's a key issue. Like, designers know how to create and how to frame and how to prototype, and in this early stage that works very well. But once the business is launched, you need a different type of skills. You need to be diligent, you need to administrate things, you need to be a manager, you need to know finance, you need to know bookkeeping, you maybe have employees, you need to manage them. So that is a critical aspect of design entrepreneurship. Like a lot of people just launch their product and then the reality of running a business sinks in. Like, oh, I really need to learn about taxes. Oh, I really need to learn about labor law because now I have employees. And many of these organizations that support entrepreneurs, like incubators, accelerators, what they aim to do is to help you bridge those knowledge gaps. So we know that you as a designer are trained like specifically, and in many of these organizations they will give you these courses, like they will show you marketing, they will show you sales, they will show you how to run actually a proper business, because obviously the creating part is very nice and very fun and we all love creating and that's where we're all designers, but then running a business and making it profitable it's another thing.
That's so interesting. I mean, this bias that you just put in the table is so interesting because it's the way you frame it is absolutely how we see it, but it's totally biased because you tend to think that you can outsource design and ideation because the thing you need to know is numbers. This is what you need to know when you are an entrepreneur, the numbers, that's the core thing. And then, yeah, things will sort of, you cannot think the other way around. What you need to know is how to design something, and then you outsource the rest of the things. And doing numbers is...
It's a commodity.
Commodity.
Yeah, you can say
it. It's running a company in those terms is very easy. Finding a good idea, being creative, understanding how you design experience, that is the part that's core. I think that's a shift that is happening in the last year. So people are truly understanding that it needs to be that thing in place first, and then the other things just surround it.
I think the key issue there is that when you go to science school, you're taught about a product, and you start thinking about product and the things that you could do to improve someone's life. But you never get the chance to learn about business. I mean, yeah, numbers are okay, numbers are easy. But when you start to think as like business strategy, that's how, as a designers, we have like a scope, a really small scope, and we cannot see most of the times unless you get in contact with that. You cannot see the strategy around the product. You see the product, you see the chair, but you don't see the business behind the chair. So that's a key issue in the science schools, that you cannot learn, or you don't learn usually to see your product as a business. Yeah. So yeah, you could outsource all those things. Even the design, the numbers, the strategy, probably the key one that you should have as a core value of your business.
But I'm pretty sure that this is your opinion. I'm pretty sure that a guy who comes from a design school is as well equipped to learn fast a strategy as a guy who comes from a school. That's right. With the strategic thinking comes in with age. It's not something that it happens to you when you're 24. So if you are young in both fields, I think you have the same chance to learn it. But somehow we tend to think that a guy who's been through this kind of education, because if you go into education and you look at what they learn, it's not even there. I mean, the strategy is something really difficult to grasp. It comes with, I mean, I think designers are better equipped because they can connect things easier. They have this way of visualizing complexity that helps them understand complex stuff. But the business and us as society, we tend to think, we leave this study to these guys because they know how to use an Excel sheet.
Any other question? Thank you all for coming, for your time, your attention.